our first speaker up, and that is our MP, Mr. Marc Serré.
Thank you, Cody, for the introduction. It's always a pleasure to be in Cape Creole. When we talk about community, when we look at the organizations, the commitment, the dedication that you have for Cape Creole, it's a model for other communities all across Nickel Belt, all across Greater Sudbury, and I think all across Northern Ontario and Canada. Keep up the good work. I know there's a lot of different issues when we look at smaller communities, rural Ontario, rural Canada, but Cape Creole has the spirit, Cape Creole has a commitment, and you have brought forward projects, and you have other projects I heard that you want to bring forward. We'll take those later. So for me, being here, I'd like just to first, we're on the territory of the Wanapati First Nations, the Jogo Band, and the Anishinaabe First Nations. And it's something, when we look at the contributions that our First Nations community have done for us, we owe them a lot of respect, and we have to look at ways on building a new relationship with our First Nations communities. Obviously, when we start off by looking at everyone in the room here, who's a board member of the museum here? Raise your hand. We got a lot of board members. That's fantastic. Great job. And also, I'd like to take a few minutes. I heard we have our two longest serving volunteer hours. We got George and Mr. Marshall. There you go. Just, I think everyone knows. They got a nice CM hat. And obviously, when we look at volunteers and we look at the dedication that you have and the community has, it's very important that we continue to foster that. The train here that we're talking about, I'm glad that Cody put a picture here. This is the train that we're talking about that's actually here now. Yeah. My understanding is that the work that the museum has done in collaboration with CP, CN, ONR to get the train here. There's a good collaboration to promote that, and when you look at that addition to the museum, it makes a big difference. And I just wanted to share a story. I know that when you first did the bid to get this, I think it was brought to my attention on the $5,000 bid, and one person or a group, I think Mr. Kilgore had made a suggestion of $5,001, and oddly enough, or good, that won the bid, because there were several bids of $5,000. So obviously, Dave, you've been watching The Price is Right too much. So we got to look at that. But essentially, you know, the announcement today, it's a lot of the work that's been done by the board members, and I know that. But by talking to the board members, by looking at the application, and this is a series of other projects that you're going to build upon. So I'm really proud to be here, and again, you know, the work that you've done to make this happen. So obviously the priority since I've been elected a year ago is working with municipalities, and I'd like to acknowledge Mayor Bigger that took the time to be here today in Cape Creole. I know Mike couldn't make it, so thank you, Mayor Bigger, for coming. Municipalities, and I know we've had changes over the last decade or so when we look at Greater Sudbury, but it's very important that we try within the volunteer base, within the community, within the ward councillors, within the system that we have in place, is find ways to improve things so that we could bring government investment from all levels. Working together from a federal to provincial to municipal is really important, and I promised since the day I was elected, I'm going to do my best to make sure that I bring your priorities together with all levels of government. So today, when we look at moving forward on the investment that we're making here with the museum, it's not only important when we look at the economic development, tourism is important, but it's very, very important when you look at the significance that the rail has had on, and that I don't need to tell you in this room about how Cape Creole and the importance And I know that we, and I'll take a moment here before I make the announcement, that I know we have some issues today that we're trying to deal with the issues of the rail crossing, and something that together I want to continue working with you to try and find a resolution to. But we could talk about that at another day. So today, when we look at the investments that the federal government is making, and I want to take, and I think our FEDNOR staff is there you go. Okay, Paul's in the back. I want to congratulate, because Paul has worked hard with the community, has worked hard with the board to try and bring those investments through FEDNOR to the community. So I just wanted to make sure I acknowledge that before we move on. So I know you're here not to hear me talk, but you said a few minutes, but you can't give politicians a few minutes. I mean, that doesn't fit. But what I want to say is I'm really pleased that FEDNOR will be investing in a Northern Ontario Rail Museum and Heritage Site in the amount of $90,000. As I mentioned here earlier, when we look at restoring the 1907 steam engine, and I know some of you, well, you weren't there in 1907. Oh, but obviously there's a proud tradition, a proud history. When we look at the locomotive 219 that we talked about, there's 100 years of the history there, and that's important. When we look at, I had the opportunity on Cape Creole days on the fire hall to look at the basement, what you're doing with the rail. Like, it's really impressive, and I think we have to find ways, and maybe that's another project, but we have to find ways to get this to the school children, to make sure they understand a lot of the work you've done, a lot of the work that the rail has done over the last 100 years and plus to build Canada. So this is something that's really part of our history, and it really serves, like I said, an educational tool, and really a symbol of our past generations. So with the town of Cape Creole, as you know, as being a big part of the rail, this will be served as a good educational tool for years to come. So the investment that we're making here with FEDNOR is part of the community infrastructure program that was set up in the last year's budget. There was a $5.2 million added to FEDNOR, and that amount is helping communities, municipalities, organizations like yourself to build that infrastructure when we look at tourism, when we look at connected development. So without any further ado, I just wanted to really thank you for coming this morning. I want you to keep looking at ways. I know the Community Action Network is strong, and the museum board, the work that you do serves the community well. I'll do my best to look at other projects, and essentially wanted just to thank you all for coming and keeping that spirit, keeping that dedication to the community of Cape Creole when it's linked overall. So I just wanted to thank you so much for being here today, and looking forward to meeting all of you after the announcement. Thank
you. All right, perfect. So cat's out of the bag now. You guys know why we're all here. So next up, I'd like to call Mr. Brian Baker up to say a few words on behalf of the Greater City of Serré.
Actually, I've got two pieces of notes here. One was, I'll start with your ward councillor, Mike Jacobo, and Mike sends his apologies. He really wanted to be here, and so he made a few notes, and I think I should share them with you. So he just wanted to say congratulations to the board, staff, and dedicated volunteers of the Northern Ontario Railroad Museum and Heritage Centre on this exciting announcement. Over the last 2 years, I've seen firsthand the amazing ingenuity, innovation, and dynamic imagination that the museum has shown, always introducing new interactive exhibits that continue to draw people from all over Ontario, Canada, and the world to Cape Creole and the city of Greater Sudbury. So Mike sends his thanks to our MP, Marc Serré, Canada 150, FEDNOR, for recognizing the importance of the Railroad Museum here, and the importance it plays in the history of our city and our country. So thank you and congratulations. And you know, on my part, you know, I thank you know, I thank you for inviting me to speak here as well. And I'd also like to recognize that we are on the Robinson Huron Treaty lands. You know, the museum tells our history, not just of Cape Breton, but the whole community of Sudbury and Northern Ontario's development as a whole. The people of Cape Breton and Greater Sudbury take so much pride in the museum, and you know, you make it very easy for members of council, the mayor, and the ward councillors to bring projects forward because of the great engagement and enthusiasm that you have as a community. And so we can point to that, and as your MP Serré was saying, you know, as an example of how we can advance other parts of our community. So we really appreciate this level of engagement. Not only is the museum an excellent tourist attraction, but it shares and preserves local heritage, which is hard to come by in an ever-changing society and community, and it is very, very important. Our history is a great source of pride for our communities, and so it is very important to maintain these assets. It's a place for everyone to learn. Hardworking people of Cape Breton, our grandfathers and grandfathers' fathers, they built and maintained the rail that built the country. And so I'm very, very proud of the contributions that we've made as a municipality. And I understand that since 2011, we've contributed about $150,000 from the municipal standpoint to various projects here at the Railroad Museum, which helped to secure funding to acquire the locomotive and transport it to the museum, amongst other initiatives. This year, I think there was a $5,000 grant through the Arts and Culture grants to the museum here. And this funding being announced today by our MP Serré on behalf of FEDNOR and Minister Baines will really bring this 1907 steam locomotive back to its proper state. Once the restoration is complete, it'll be another marvel in a series of grand achievements for the dedicated and truly passionate volunteers from this community who want to and who continue to build piece by deliberate piece, the crucial beacon of our local heritage. Once again, on behalf of the City Council and our citizens, I want to express our sincere appreciation to our local MP for showcasing all that Sudbury has to offer to Minister Baines and the federal government. And you know,
more to come.
Thank you, because for advocating the need for this investment is very important for our citizens. I'm very proud of the museum, and I also like to thank Mr. Cassiotti and the hard-working men and women of the Northern Ontario Railroad Museum and the board. So thank you very much. Merci. And I'm probably going on too long now, so I will wrap up and say thank you very much.
Thank you.
I forgot one thing. Sorry. My father passed. Some of you might, he worked here in 1957, 58, and 59. So he wanted to be here today. But Frank, he's gonna come and visit. So I promise we're gonna do that. So I just wanted to pass on as thanks to the community, and that's why there's a special meaning to me also by having my father being here for years. So
Been a great railway connection for sure, for sure. Next up, I'd like to call up Randy Crisp, who is the chair of the Cape Breton Community Action Network. There he is. Yeah.
Well, thank you firstly to FEDNOR, I guess, for the infusion of funds to the Northern Ontario Railroad Museum and Heritage Centre. Thank you to the honourable guests for being here tonight and making this happen, or today and making this happen. A big thank you to Cody, Wendy, the board of NORM, and the membership of NORM, and especially to the volunteers that make this place go. As the Cape Breton Community Action Network, we are very, very pleased and honored to be able to partner with the museum on many projects within the community, and it just will continue to no end, especially with the infusion of $90,000. Cape Breton is a railroad town, and the museum speaks very loudly that it is and carries on the heritage. And again, thank you to the museum board members, and Cody and Wendy in particular. Thank you.
Speaking of railway connections and small town connections, our next speaker, Richie Castonguay, is formerly a Cape Breton boy. He's set up a shop in. Still am. Fair enough. Always a Cape Breton boy.
Always.
So Richie set up a shop in Sudbury, Height Services, and Richie and his team, Derek, I'm going to ask you to come up as well with Richie here. They've been instrumental in starting to get this restoration kind of off the ground and rolling. And when we go outside after this, you'll be able to see some of the hard work that these guys have already started to do, and it's absolutely tremendous. And we're looking forward to kind of continuing our partnership with these guys. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to you guys, sir.
Well, thank you for inviting us. When Cody first got a hold of me to talk about this 219, I was wondering, well, what am I going to get myself into? It's quite the project, and without funding, from the government and from the people in the town, this wouldn't get off the ground. There's still lots of work left to do. It's a big challenge. The hardest thing, something that's built in 1907, is trying to find parts. They're just not on the shelf anywhere. So a lot of stuff, I rely on my master fabricator here, Derek, and we have to re-engineer or build a brand new piece because there's nothing left to work with because of rust and decay of the original. So we're pretty proud of the work that we've done in trying to restore this piece of equipment for the younger generation to see, because it would be a shame to see it go to the scrap pile like most of the old antique pieces of equipment. And they got a good wide variety of things for the younger generation to see here. So I'm quite pleased. I'm sure as Derek is too, to be part of this project. Thank you.
Right on. So with that being said, again, this has been a wonderful project, and just to kind of give some background information for those who don't know, it's fitting that I was speaking with Paul Denny before this announcement about how this type of position, you go home and you don't necessarily get to turn your brain off. The wheels kind of keep turning, and I can attest to the amount of late night text messages I'm getting from Stu and Wendy, and we're always thinking of new ideas. But it just so happened one night I was up and decided to kind of just surf the web a bit and stumbled across the surplus assets list of ONR's equipment, and sure enough, this old relic was listed up for bid, and the pictures were of it sitting in a field kind of abandoned and in need of some desperate TLC. So the next morning I was able to convince the board to let me go out and find pledges, and thanks to the support of donors from throughout the greater city of Sudbury, across Northern Ontario, and even some as far as California, the pledges started rolling in, and we were able to raise $5,000 in a 2-week period. And as Marc mentioned, Dave Kilgore goes, bid 5,001, and he goes, I'll give you the buck if you need it. So I said, no, I said, I think we can cover that. So sure enough, we put in the bid for $5,001, and a couple of weeks later, the phone rang, and ONR said, congratulations, you've purchased a brand new steam locomotive. And we went, okay. Now the challenge of how to get that here. So We've worked with some incredible people, John Tibb and his staff at the ONR, Daryl Duquette and his staff at the Ottawa Valley Railway, Tony Marquis and his crew here with CP and Serré, and obviously CN Rail and the team we have here in Cape Breton. So between the 4 rail groups, we were able to transport this thing on a specialized flat car from Cochrane, Ontario to Cape Breton, and get it here, and then with the help of Northern Crane and Lecroix Construction, we were able to float it down the road in the opposite direction on a flatbed and eventually lift it into the yard on track that had been hand laid in January by a group of about 30 or 40 volunteers. So you know, the levels of involvement and engagement are, you know, incredible in terms of corporate sponsorship and then that grassroots, you know, element to this project. So it's been an incredible ride on this project so far, and like I said, I'm anxious just as much as all of you to see what the final result's going to be. So again, thank you to Marc Serré, to Brian Digger for being here, the contributions from the city, from FEDNOR now, Paul Denny, I think he's still hiding in the back. A big thank you to you, sir. You've been a phenomenal partner to work with, so thank you so much for taking the time to come out here for a few lunch meetings over the course of the year, so we definitely appreciate that. With that being said, I'd like to call our board of directors up, as well as the speakers we had, and we'll just do a quick picture here, and then I would invite all of you guys to come out and actually check out the locomotive in the yard once we're done. So
And the cab.
and the cab, yeah. So please feel free to stick around after the photo here.